in this one.
He certainly will. You do not want to lose with the white pieces. Start giving your opponent that confidence boost. And we have D4. Action is underway here in Division 2 of the chessable Masters. And by the way, I like that artwork behind Levon. Is he the king? Is he trying to say that he also is painting? He is going to at least do art on the chessboard, David.
He's a bit of an artist when he gets in the flow. Let's hope for Levon's sake the Black King isn't the one toppling over on the board at least. But in the meantime, it's the Grunfeld defense. And actually a rare guest in Aronian's repertoire, not his usual stuff. And wow, look at this maximum central tension already. I've been playing this opening my entire career, my entire life. But this is a rare position, I've got to say. Just on this last move, Black initiating the chaos. Look at that Black Bishop, the assassin, the archer from afar. And already the fact that Vincent's paused is not a good sign for White. If he wants to kind of bail out, he'll start taking pawns in the center. You shouldn't take the C-pawn. As you mentioned, there's tension along the diagonal. Take this pawn instead. And this will guarantee a bunch of exchanges. And we'll see the kind of the skeleton of the Grunfeld form in a moment. White has more central pawns. White has a really nice structure there, but Black has activity and will aim to erode, chip away at White's center from afar. So interesting mind games for me, Robert. I haven't been following Levon too closely in this event, but definitely not kind of his normal repertoire. A bit of a surprise for Vincent at these early stages.
And that's what Levon has shown a willingness to do. He doesn't just play in one style, in one opening. He is venturing into new territory, and that makes it difficult to pin him down, to prepare for. And this queen on d5, normally we don't like our queens out in the center of the board because they get kicked by pieces, but look at what Levon is doing. He's actually trading the queens, liquidating. So, David, we're getting the start of a Grunfeld ending here. I believe king takes queen. You can use your king as a weapon in the endgame, so you don't have to castle it. But what do you make of these types of positions? Are they more up Vincent or Levon's alley?
I would say Vincent, despite his tender years, he's really, really good in strategic positions. Shout out to Peter Lecco as well, his longtime coach, who's given this kind of solid foundation to Vincent's play, who's kind of taught him how to kind of maximize, how to grind in these types of endgames. And yeah, Levon, you would associate him with more active play potentially, Robert. So with the queens off the board, unlikely to be any direct tactics, minimal attacks, despite the white king sitting in the center. I think now Vincent will activate that white rook. There we go. The reason for viewers at home that he took with the king was to connect his rooks, get that white rook out of h1 as quickly as possible. Now the white king might just slide back, and at least he's kind of castled. But yes, a superficial castle, but his king's actually far better placed than it would be off in the corner. You don't need to keep the king too safe. You're really active. As I mentioned earlier, I've got a lot of experience here, mostly from the black side, and it's not that much fun compared to a normal Grunfeld. I think Vincent's trying to suck the joy out, not for us. We're going to enjoy it nonetheless, Robert, but for Levon Aronian.
Well, Levon just put his rook in line with the white king, so it's clear. He wants to push this pawn to e5 as the d4 pawn is pinned. And David, I know you've got experience on the black side, and when you play these top grandmasters, they don't miss simple ideas like that. But what they do accomplish is they take control over open files and restrict your pieces. This situation on the queen side is one where white already has the rooks connected. As you mentioned, the rooks can take control over long open files, and his bishop on f4, as long as it can't be blockaded, it stops a black rook from getting to a defensive square like b8. So I have to agree with you that it isn't pleasant to have this type of position from the black side if your opponent knows what he's doing. Does Vincent, David?
That's the big question. He's paused, and a bit of an odd moment to pause because, as you mentioned, Robert, a huge threat on the board, pawn to e5. It might not necessarily win material, but it would break Black's position open, and yeah, the White King will start to sweat. So there's only two moves I see, two candidate moves in this position. Either you slide back with the White King, just kind of automatic, the autopilot move, or you put the white rook on c5, position it on a slightly vulnerable square, but just to control Black's potential counterplay. You mentioned knowing what you're doing. Often the top players, they'll be able to feel out the position, the structure they want, the pieces they want to keep on the board or exchange. But slightly odd at least, to see Vincent think for so long, already over 2 minutes down on the clock. And it's still basically the early stages. He was the one who chose this variation. There we go. One of the moves happens. Rook to c5. Very logical move, but slightly slower start. Do you think the nerves are playing a role here, or just trying to find his bearings?
I think there are nerves because he's got a chance to qualify for the top division, and he's playing Lan Aronian, who is a trickster, who doesn't mind bluffing. And you ask all of the top players about Lan, they say they can't always tell when he's deep in preparation or just playing off the cuff. And it's just because he has so much experience and he's beaten all of the best players on the planet. Look up his head-to-head with Magnus Carlsen in classical chess. He's taken him down so many times in his career. So Lan, is he in his preparation? Is he just rolling with the punches as the moves happen? I do think he's in prep, David. I have to say this looks like a standard position from the black side. And once again, he is trying to open up ideas with e5 by moving his bishop to g4. And also he's connected his rook. So I like what Lan's doing. No problems with what Vincent has done. But David, the clock, that is where I feel concerned for Vincent, is at some point he will need to speed up.
Need to speed up, and he will need to stay vigilant on this move because there are some tactics in the air. If white were to be careless and play a move like h3, kind of asking a question of black's light square bishop, then black would just trade off on f3 and look at the white rooks. They're actually lined up on dark squares. Knight takes d4 here, I think, would be a killer, at least giving black a big advantage. And now bishop takes d4. Both the white rooks are forked, double attacked, and Lan Aronian would suddenly win on the spot. So Vincent needs to get one of his rooks to a safer square. This is what to avoid. And once you know what to avoid, it makes it easier to figure out what you want to do. Instead, he puts his rook on c1. So that tactic doesn't work. Black can potentially get a rook for 2 pieces, but you want to keep your minor pieces on the board right now. And Lan Aronian, I'm going to say, Robert, because he doesn't he doesn't throw out the Grunfeld too often, I do fear for him unless he's able to get something concrete. If white's able to keep this bind, the strong pawn on d4, then I think black might be suffering long term. So yeah, kind of pros and cons. Black's very active, but you need to continue to be energetic in this type of position, and not easy to do. Just kind of taking your foot off the pedal, off the gas, and you could just be in for a lot of torture.
Experience, having the black side of the Grunfeld in this endgame, it is favorable for white, who has the activity, but black in the long run has outside pawns that potentially you can use to your advantage. So while Lan sits in for his first major think of the game, why don't we zoom out, because we also have the grand final in Division 3, Alexei Sarana versus Alexander Grischuk. You see that on the right hand side of the screen, and what a different type of position we have there. Apparently Grischuk is just crushing him.
Wow, what has happened on that board? Look at the evaluation bar on the right side of your screens, everyone. White is apparently just winning despite the fact it's level material, and it's purely because of the passivity of black's pieces. Look at the black queen on the kind of left flank on b8 there, so far separated from her king. That's always a red flag in any chess position. If your queen's that far away, she'll never participate in the defense, and you might just get checkmated. Grischuk turning on the style. I've got to say, Robert, as well, just below the board, I see his rapid rating. That is so deceptive. Alexander Grischuk is a 27,800 player. He's not a 2648 at rapid, no matter what. And yeah, he's just got a clear-cut plan. White's going to throw the f-pawn forward. White is going to go for Sarana's king. And yeah, dramatic start to Division 3 over there. I mean, it's just a glorious position right now for white. Sarana blocks up that pawn push that I was mentioning, Robert, but the problems are long-term here.
And white hasn't sacrificed anything. Normally to get a position like this, you might even give up a whole piece, just to go on the attack. But here, the material is even. The black queen on b8, the black rook on a8, they're not participating. And you like to say when the king and queen are divorced, that can cause problems. The queen needs to be on a square like f7 to help ensure the king's safety. So what would I do here if I were Grischuk? I'd be looking at a rook lift. I'm not even sure which rook. Rook c3 over to the king side, rook f3, just scoot it on over to g3 or h3. I feel like some of these moves are extremely natural, but I know from experience, David, that sometimes you play the obvious move and the engine immediately criticizes you. So I would be looking at queen h5, a rook lift, but perhaps there's something better. Do you see anything that is less brute force than a move like queen to h5 and a rook lift?
Question, Robert. And I think here, if I were Grischuk, I would be facing the exact same dilemma. Look at him kind of shaking his head on the camera, kind of counting, calculating. He's spending too much time because there are too many attractive moves. You mentioned a bunch of them. Queen h5 looks so tempting. Rook to f3, I like maybe a bit more than rook c3 because then you can kind of switch to the queen side, king side, depending on where your opponent starts playing. Yeah, but essentially you just have to trust your instincts and move. Grischuk, the one thing that did trip him up, I feel, from the kind of first match against Sarana, when I played through those games, it was the clock. It was his time handling. And Sarana, he's not going to be shy about hustling on time if he needs to. Black's position is so desperately bad. But Grischuk, he's got too many choices. He's not going to calculate a checkmate here. I think we were both trying to work out whether there's anything direct. Grischuk, look at him talking to himself now. He's thinking the same, but he's just got to move. He's still going to be better. Like you said, the eval bar might switch, but who cares? You just have to keep time up your sleeve for later. As the featured chat say, it is dominance, this position, but that will change if the clock keeps under 4 minutes now. This is the story of Grischuk's career.
It really is. And if you give Black a few turns, rook f7, knight f8, get this bishop out of here. Like, it's not like it's a complicated plan from Black's perspective. And that's why I think you and I are agreeing that White needs to act fast. And sometimes haste makes waste, but I would not pause before I played a move like queen to h5. But you can tell by Grischuk's face right now. He's a poker player, but I don't think that he has a poker face at the moment. He's like, where is it? How do I actually go after my opponent? And he has yet to move, David. He is down 4 minutes to conduct an attack from here. It's not that obvious. He needs to act fast.
He needs to just move, stop calculating. I mean, this has been the problem of my career as well. Time issues, especially I notice when you have a pleasant advantage and kind of your spidey senses are tingling. You know in the back of your mind you're winning. And it's frustrating if your opponent kind of sets up defenses like this and there's no obvious breakthrough. But that's where the top players, the Magnus Carlsens, the Hikaru Nakamuras of the world, they just trust their instincts. They just set a trap. Eventually he decides upon knight to a5, wow. Robert, and multi-purpose move that actually not on my radar, but I love it.
I think that was the best move. I'm going to quickly look. I'm going to go back a half step and put it on the move. That was the best move by far, knight a5. So Alexander Grischuk, he spends quite a lot of time and move that you admitted, I wasn't looking in that direction. I'm looking at the king side. He says, my knight isn't on its best square. It can hop back to c4 to ask questions of this bishop on d6. It also freezes this b-pawn. You definitely don't want to see this knight land on c6 to hit this queen on b8. And, the move rook f7 played by Sarana, that's a pretty natural choice. But I think that this knight, David, can wrap around to c4, or maybe he's just going to keep it here forever and say, Black is stuck. You don't actually have an active plan.
And I think, again, this is great for explaining to everyone who isn't familiar with Grischuk his style. He's a perfectionist, and that's a very good thing in chess, but it's a kind of double-edged blade. Perfectionism in rapid chess can backfire long-term, and there we see queen to g4. He's playing on both flanks. I like it, Robert. I would have also liked the consistent kind of knight c4. It felt like he was playing on that side of the board, but he's looking at both flanks. He's keeping Black honest, and already traps. The Black knight is frozen, cannot move because the white knight would leap into b6. This is almost Zugzwang, I've got to say. Black can barely touch a single pawn, a single piece, but it's all about the clock. Grischuk, can he hold his nerves? Pawn to b6. Look at Sarana on the camera. He's walked into another knight fork, knight d8, just wins the game on the spot. Will Grischuk see it?
Oh my gosh. David, I love this game. This is a knight's dance. And he repeats. This is that old school Russian training that if you can repeat, you have to do it. And then only afterwards will he take this rook But David, if he doesn't take this rook and finds whatever better move exists in the position, I'm done. I won't be able to talk anymore. I'll be speechless.
That would be sadistic, not even snacking on a free exchange here, free material. He does eventually take, and a good decision to play that move quickly. But yeah, so classy, just so classy, Robert. When it all comes together for Grischuk, I mean, there's no one better to watch, simply. White now has moves like queen to h5 check. You either win the h7 pawn or you sneak in behind enemy lines to the e8 square. Rook lifts still look really tempting right now. Yeah, I mean, rook to f3, rook to g3. There's something is going to collapse. He does deliver a check first. But Sarana, you can see it on the camera. He's trying to keep his poker face this time. But the occasional flinch, he's not enjoying this at all. He knows he's just been outclassed in this game. And we have a real match in our hands in this one if Grischuk takes the first win.
Sarana won all 3 games between these two in the winners' final. It was a 3-0 sweep. And now it looks like Grischuk has a chance to get out to a hot start. But he does need to watch his time. We spoil winning positions regularly when we don't have enough time to calculate. I am keeping an eye on the other board, and I am also keeping an eye on this rook on f3, sliding over. David, at this stage, I do think that Grischuk has everything under control. The rook is coming over for the attack, and it's just a matter of time before the black king side falls apart.
Feels like it's getting closer, but they do say that good positions don't win games, good moves do. So he still needs to land that killer touch, that final blow, which is often the hardest thing to do. I'm expecting Sarana to move the black light squared bishop and just say, okay, prove it. I'm sure there is something in the position, but it's definitely Grischuk with 1 minute who has to find it. He has to calculate. What else? Black is totally stuck. There's literally nothing else to do. Sarana will move his light square bishop. But yeah, look at that clock. 1 minute and counting. Big threat on the board. Queen takes h7. And black again has to defend. Retreat the knight. What else? Knight to f8. There is no mate, they say. But this might be the exception, Robert.
This looks like there will be a mating attack. And while Grischuk is on the offensive, I just want to note that the other game, it's about to fizzle out. So as we head back to our bird's eye view, we actually might catch the end of the first game in Division 2. Vincent Keymer and Lan Aronian. They had bishops of opposite color. Well, Vincent, he just left. I don't know. His clock is still ticking until the draw is agreed, as it has been. So game 1 in the books, David, a very fair result. Looks like Lan handled himself quite nicely.
Lan, we were saying his position was slightly uncomfortable. He needed to be energetic, but he did find the energy in the end, and he was able to trade off a bunch of pieces. Opposite color bishops do have that drawish tendency. Probably the most drawish final position you'll ever see. But yeah, it will be a close match, of course, in Division 2. All eyes on this one, Robert. And I think I found the checkmate. If black does retreat, knight back to f8, white can actually take on f6, blow open the black king, and start entering on the g file. Rook to g3, check will come. The queen will come into f7. Sarana might just throw in the towel and resign here. No way to defend. It is collapsing. Grischuk has found the incisive path to victory.
And it's a lovely one. h6. Well, this is clear. Demolition time. Just bishop takes h6. You get rid of all of the shield in front of the black's king. That's pretty basic. And then for black, knight f6, I think knight takes f6 check. Not nearly as obvious, but sacrificing a knight to get at the black king. It's just a quick attack. And David, I mean, you're calling it. Looks like Grischuk had everything under control from start to finish in this game. And that knight maneuver, and look at Sarana giving up h7 with check, just hoping that Grischuk will go wrong somewhere. That knight maneuver, knight a5, I'm still so impressed by that decision from Grischuk.
We were questioning it. We thought he was kind of playing it fast and loose with the clock. A bit risky there, but ultimately he invested 2 or 3 minutes, Grischuk. And that knight maneuver, knight a5, knight c6, knight d8, it was the winning idea. And look at this. He's still showing accuracy, giving all the checks. Now, actually, rook to h7 might lead to checkmate, a very well-known pattern there. Rook to h7, followed by queen to h5, and delivering the killer blow. Or you can just take the bishop if you don't want to risk it. Grischuk. Again, perfectionism, Robert. It's costing him a lot of time, but it's going to win him the game.
We see off to the left of the board, it does say M5, checkmate in 5, and Grischuk finds it. I mean, you see accuracy right next to his name there. It says nearly 95%. I don't know where that 5% went away from him, because it seems like every single turn that we saw was the absolute best move. And even in a position where he could take a bishop for free, there's nothing wrong with this move. It's still winning for white. He could play queen h5 and deliver checkmate this way. He could play bishop h6 and then take on g7. But David, when Alexander Grischuk is playing like this, I mean this, there are even Magnus Carlsen would struggle against him, as improved in the past. And Alexander Grischuk, he takes game one.
Power play, gangster chess.
He's unstoppable.